Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the absolute core of Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory because we're going to uncover exactly why the way you view your own success changes literally everything. We are going to break down the actual mechanics behind what keeps you motivated, and we'll unpack a really subtle psychological trap that catches even the highest achievers off guard.
Okay, picture this. Imagine an outstanding medical student named Elena. She has just received a perfect score on a totally grueling anatomy exam. But instead of feeling proud of her hard work, she just sighs. She looks at the perfect grade and actually tells herself, I was just lucky this time. The exam happened to cover the section I reviewed last night. I mean, we've all been there, right? Convincing ourselves we somehow just tricked the universe into giving us a win. She completely brushes off her perfect score as a total fluke. Even though Elena clearly possesses all the actual abilities necessary for success, she's trapped. Which brings up a fascinating question. Why do incredibly capable, proven people fail to believe they actually control their own achievements? Elena doesn't genuinely believe she is the author of her success. And the scary thing is, that lack of belief doesn't just make her feel a little insecure today, it quietly erodes the entire psychological foundation for anything she wants to accomplish tomorrow. Let's move into our first section, the success paradox, and the danger of discounting your wins. So what Elena is actually lacking here is a concept psychology calls self-efficacy. Now, it is absolutely crucial to note that this is way more than just having a warm, fuzzy feeling about yourself. It's an essential psychological mechanism. Think of it as the actual engine of perseverance. It is your foundational, rock-solid belief in your own capacity to successfully perform an action, and more importantly, to sustain your effort despite the inevitable obstacles that are going to get in your way. That brings us to Section 2, Architects of Our Lives. This is all about moving beyond passive victimhood. You see, Albert Bandura completely threw out the idea that humans just passively respond to their environment like sponges. Instead, he gave us this brilliant principle called reciprocal determinism. It basically shows this constant dynamic interaction between your personal factors, like your thoughts, your emotions, your biology, your environment, and your behavior. Sure, we are shaped by our environment, but we also actively transform it through the interaction of these three things. To put that into perspective, imagine two people thrown into the exact same challenge or the exact same hostile environment. The critical issue here isn't whether the circumstances are favorable. It's how these two individuals interpret their own capabilities. The person who truly believes they can influence the situation, they're going to behave entirely differently, take different risks, and push so much harder than the person who perceives themselves as powerless. And because of that fundamental difference in behavior, self-efficacy forms the absolute foundation of human agency. This means intentionally regulating your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors to actually shape your environment. It's the very thing that empowers you to stop being a passive product of circumstance and instead step up and become the architect of your own life. Okay, let's dive into Section 3, the engine of persistence, and how self-efficacy actually drives action. Bandura conceptualized this agency as a mechanism that guides exactly how we invest our effort. And high self-efficacy operates in three distinct steps. First up, goal setting. People with high self-efficacy naturally select much more challenging goals. Second, commitment. They look at obstacles not as threats to be avoided, but as genuine opportunities for growth. And third, persistence. Honestly, this is the core takeaway. Persistence is what keeps your motivation from completely collapsing when things get incredibly tough, because you fundamentally believe that your actions can and will produce meaningful outcomes. Now, this isn't just some academic theory. It has massive real-world implications. In behavior change research and clinical interventions, studies show that self-efficacy is often the single most powerful mediator predicting treatment outcomes. Just think about that for a second. A person can receive extensive professional support, education, and fully understand the benefits of changing their lifestyle. But if they don't believe deep down that they are internally capable of making that change, sustainable transformation is highly unlikely. The engine just isn't turned on. Which leads us right into Section 4, ability versus luck, and the silent psychological battle we all fight. Going back to Elena's "I was just lucky" comment from earlier, this is actually a surprisingly widespread phenomenon. Suzanne Sheffield did some fascinating research back in 2004 on gender and science, and she observed that women's achievements, especially in scientific disciplines, are frequently attributed to luck rather than genuine ability. And the real tragedy here? This dismissal doesn't just come from societal biases. It comes internally, from the high achievers themselves. You really have to look at the contrast between these two mindsets. When you view your success as just the result of chance or serendipity, you totally fail to develop an internal sense of control. Your accomplishments feel psychologically unstable, right? Because they rely on external, uncontrollable factors. You basically live with this exhausting constant fear that your luck is eventually going to run out. But if you attribute your success to your own ability and discipline, well, then your success becomes psychologically stable. It relies on intentional action, which means, hey, it's reproducible. When you finally step up and recognize your own competence and hard work, every single win transforms into what Bandura called a mastery experience. This is literally the most powerful source of self-efficacy. It actively proves to your brain that your internal control actually works and that your success can be reproduced through your own intentional actions. So, acknowledging your capability isn't just about patting yourself on the back or indulging in some temporary pride. It is so much deeper than that. It's about the gradual accumulation of psychological capital. You are literally storing up the internal resources you are desperately going to need to draw upon for your next big hurdle. And that brings us to our final section, the confidence paradox, where we look at humility over ego. Researchers have studied people who survive the absolute most extreme, punishing environments on Earth. Richard Logan's studies back in 1985 on polar explorers found something really counterintuitive. The most highly adaptive individuals didn't act like arrogant superheroes. Not at all. Instead, they survived extreme ordeals using something he termed unself-conscious self-assurance. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, rather than trying to aggressively force their will on a harsh reality, these super adaptive people use deep psychological humility. They understand themselves as just one part of a much larger system. They recognize the severe constraints of their environment, for sure, but they combine that reality check with a quiet, incredibly powerful confidence in their own capacity to adapt and act effectively within those constraints. And when you let go of that self-consciousness, when you finally stop obsessing over your ego or how you appear to everyone else, you open the door to an amazing state that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow. This is an optimal state of absorption. You are no longer paralyzed by the fear of being evaluated. Instead, you experience pure, uninterrupted concentration and highly effective action. So, bringing it all back home, what is the path forward for our brilliant medical student, Elena? To truly overcome her insecurity and stop feeling like a fraud, she needs to stop obsessing over her outward appearance and the constant fear of evaluation. By shifting her focus to simply exploring knowledge and developing her genuine capabilities, she can immerse herself in this flow state and finally break that toxic cycle of self-doubt. As we wrap up this explainer on social cognitive theory, I really want you to take a hard look at your own recent successes. Think about the last time you crushed a goal. Did you just shrug and attribute it to luck, or did you claim it as a mastery experience? Remember, you always have a choice in how you view your capabilities. So I'll leave you with this one question. Are you going to be a passive product of circumstance, just hoping to get lucky again, or are you ready to become the architect of your own life?